Welcome to English 199. I'm Dr. Liza Long, and in this presentation, we will learn more about using AI tools for academic research. Let's get started. There's no denying that AI tools are transforming academic research even as we speak. They are being used in a variety of ways, from data analysis to assisting with publication or review of scholarly journals, which many of us probably want to think about. Because it's becoming so prevalent so quickly, it's important for us to understand both what it can do and what some of the limitations are, and also for us to return to Ethan Mollick's principle and really focus on how we can be the human in the loop during the research process. So here are some key AI research tools that already exist, and by the time I post this PowerPoint, it will be out of date. First of all, we've got our large language models. These are things like ChatGPT, Claude, Google Gemini, Meta, and now DeepSeek, right? Then we have research-specific tools such as Elicit, which was an early tool that predated ChatGPT, Consensus, and Perplexity.ai. That's the one I have the most experience with personally. I will say, and I'll share this as well in our class this week in our discussion board, I just tried out a new research tool called Storm from Stanford University that is really, really good. So I'm going to share that one this week as well. Keep in mind these things are moving quickly. We also know that academic search engines are already enhanced with AI. So tools like Semantic Scholar, or yes, our very own Google Scholar, use AI to try to find us the best sources. And finally, we have AI writing assistants. Many of us think of Grammarly. Some of you may be familiar with Quillbot. Of course, ChatGPT, Claude, the other LLMs can also be writing assistants. And Microsoft has built in lots of tools, or Gemini is built into Google. So here are some things that AI can do. And I should have said this right up front. I put this presentation together in partnership with Claude.ai. So many of these ideas were Claude's, some of them were mine. As is often the case with the work that I do, we iterated back and forth to try to come up with a presentation that we could agree on. So some things that AI can do include helping to generate research questions. I personally love this use. I'm doing some data analysis right now with my English 102 students from last semester. We used AI pretty heavily to generate a wide variety of research questions. Because LLMs are generative, sometimes they come up with ideas that we might not think of. So this can be a particularly interesting use of an AI tool in research. Another thing that I worked on with English 102 and that you might have the chance to focus on this week is using AI to help with precision searching by suggesting search terms or search strategies for research. And again, my students had a lot of success with that in English 102. Now, the third point, I am going to speak to you as a student here. Now, as a student, I would absolutely love it if I could find a shortcut by using AI to summarize my articles for me, say for a literature review. And a tool that I use to organize my materials is NotebookLM, which can in fact summarize complex articles. These summary tools are built into pretty much any LLM. Claude has been particularly good at it for a while. Adobe, if you have PDFs and you have Adobe Pro, it will summarize your articles for you. All right, here's what I've learned as a student, and maybe your experience will be different. I think it's a bad idea to have AI summarize complex articles for you before you've taken a crack at that task yourself. So thinking back to how to be the human in the loop, keep in mind that AI can hallucinate. It's getting better and better, but it still can. You bring a unique perspective, a unique set of experiences to every reading. I know I'm getting a little bit into reader response theory here, but you are a unique reader for a text. No one like you has ever accessed that text before. And I'm speaking again from my own experience as a student. If you outsource that first read to AI, it will inevitably color how you read the text. You will deny yourself the opportunity to engage in friction by trying to work through the complicated ideas in the text alone without the assistance of AI. So For myself, I have developed a research protocol where I still do the first reads on articles. But with Notebook LM again, it can be really great for me to upload the article once I've read it and I've come to my own conclusions. Then I can ask the AI to summarize it. And also in a tool like Notebook or in Claude, if you have a project, I can query the document. So I can have like a conversation with the source, which I think is fantastic and a great way to reinforce the learning. But I told my students this as well. My own sense is that we should keep ourselves as the humans in the loop. For summarizing complicated articles, we should read those first. And then of course we can get some help, and it's really great at that. I'm thinking specifically, I think I was reading a piece by Michel Foucault. I'm an English major, obviously, and Foucault is very dense for me. But I read it, I engaged with it, I brought my own questions and experience to the text, and then I had a wonderful time with Google Gemini, like trying to understand this text, and I feel like I do have a more robust understanding. So I would say AI can be very helpful there, but don't deny yourself that delicious first read and that friction of engaging with tough ideas. If you let the AI summarize the articles first, it will shape how you read the articles, and you might not catch hallucinations if they exist. Another point would be to identify key scholars and journals. Now, early on, when I wrote Critical Worlds, AI was not very good at this. So it would make up sources, and it still will sometimes. Like if you get a paper that feels kind of like it was written like AI and the sources are fake, this is because LLMs can hallucinate sources. However, even back then in 2023, ChatGPT was really great at identifying key scholars in a field. So when I wrote Critical Worlds, I would ask ChatGPT, I would have some scholars in mind, but I would say, these are some scholars I'm thinking of for reader response theory, for example. I'd say, I'm thinking of Louise Rosenblatt, I'm thinking of Peter Elbow, like who else should I think of? And ChatGPT was really helpful with that. So back to the idea of like being able to get a sense for a literature review can be a really great partner there. And then finally, I honestly use it all the time for this now. I have a custom GPT written because it still makes mistakes, but it can help with citation formatting and it's lovely. So why create an APA citation yourself? They were prone to errors. This was an interesting thing because when I started teaching last fall, ChatGPT still couldn't do an APA style citation, but within 3 weeks it could. So again, these tools are changing and growing rapidly. All right, what AI cannot do. I have a bunch of asterisks here because this has been another interesting week in AI. And by interesting, I mean a lot of things have come out and are coming out right now. A new reasoning model from OpenAI, a new deep research from Gemini that I've just started to play with. There's just a lot of interesting research tools out there. So they cannot access real-time databases. I think when I made this PowerPoint last week, that was true, but I suspect it's not true now. We're increasingly moving towards something called agents. And I think if I'm reading the press release from OpenAI's newest model, it would be an agent that could access real-time databases for you. So it could actually go out there and do your research. That's what I have yet. May provide outdated information. That's still true. So you'd always want to check the accuracy of the information. Again, cannot verify source accuracy. That was, it used to just make up sources, but again, I'm qualifying that as a yet. I think we might see that change within weeks, if not months, right? And then cannot evaluate research quality. I also see that as a yet. I think this is something it will be able to do. So it might save us time in these areas later. Cannot replace critical thinking. I don't have an asterisk next to this one because I'm hopeful that the critical thinking that humans do will remain important, but who knows? Probably it will replace critical thinking. Anyway, this is where we are, right? So some best practices when you're working with these tools. First, always verify the AI generated information. Now, I will tell you, since I first started working with these tools, they have gotten so much better with the hallucination problems, but I don't think with the way these tools are created, we'll ever get to 100% accuracy. So it's still always going to be important to just fact check the output of the AI. You could do that in a few ways. Like when I was doing the Critical Worlds textbook, I'm an expert in that field, so I thought it was very useful, and a lot of experts say this. If it's something you know really well, And you're going to know just by looking at it if it's right or not, right? You should still probably verify any sources, but this is where these tools have been incredibly useful for experts. But we need to make sure that people, our students, if they're learning these tools, that they're aware about the potential pitfalls. I think it's important to use multiple tools. I do this a lot, but again, I would say for myself, NotebookLM has proven to be a very handy way for me to organize my research. It's kind of like OneNote with AI. So I'm increasingly starting to like the Google Gemini, and all of their products are really interesting and doing some great things. I also use Claude Projects to keep detailed records. So both NotebookLM and Claude Projects have been useful. If you have ideas, I hope you'll share them on the discussion board. And I just started using that new tool Storm from Stanford, which is really interesting. I do think it's important right now that we be transparent about AI use. Now, I completely understand we don't cite spell check anymore, right? And I imagine we'll come to a time where we won't need to be quite as transparent about AI use as I feel like we need to be right now. So in this class, we're really trying to document how we're using AI, and I try to be very transparent about how I'm using AI, but maybe in the future that won't be necessary. I think for now, as we continue to figure out who the human in the loop is, we want to be transparent about AI use. And then finally, following academic integrity guidelines. And a lot of journals, well, this is one of your assignments actually this week, a lot of journals have come out with AI guidelines, so you'll want to be aware of those. All right, let's talk briefly about effective prompting. And this is something I remember when AI first started, I thought, oh, this is great. I'm going to train all my students to be prompt engineers. But this is becoming increasingly less important. I'm trying to think how to say this. Basically, the AIs are getting so good that you can now just ask them to create the prompts for themselves. And so I very often at this point, instead of trying to craft the perfect prompt, work through an iterative session with ChatGPT or Copilot or Gemini and have the AI tool come up with the prompt. Especially for things like being specific about my research needs, it can help me to narrow and focus. And I saw this with my students as well. Definitely breaking complex questions into smaller parts. It's super helpful with this. I mentioned Michel Foucault, right? I love NotebookLM because I can query the document and it can give me explanations. Increasingly, these these tools will show you how they're reasoning and how they're coming to their conclusions. I'm writing a piece for my blog right now on that Storm tool because it shows the bots talking to each other, creating a prompt, and then explaining their reasoning. It's really interesting to me right now. It's always important to try to get citations with links to sources and make sure they're real links. Even to this day, sometimes you'll find errors. So the iterative process is what I would stress most here. I think prompt engineering is increasingly less important, but the understanding that you should iterate and refine your prompts with the AI's help is probably the most important takeaway for research. Verification process. I talked about this throughout, but you do need to check. I think some of you may have learned the CRAP test, or I teach SIFT as a way to verify information and vet information. That's still important. We still need to verify and vet information. So making sure that we're checking that the sources actually exist and that they say what the LLM says it says, right? Then documenting how you went about doing that. In my students' case, they had to do a SIFT, stop, investigate, find other coverage, and trace quotes back to original sources. That's what SIFT stands for. So they had to go through a SIFT documentation process for the peer-reviewed journal articles that they used for their paper. You might think about a model like that as well. So these are some common pitfalls that I've seen already. And the first one, I can't stress that enough. Be the human in the loop. You want to treat AI as a partner in your research, but you're still in charge, right? So you need to make sure that you're getting what you want. Another common pitfall, which I can tell someone's a newbie with AI when they send me, I call this pret-a-porter, like ready to wear AI, where all they did was type in one crappy prompt and then it kicks out a paper, right? And it's clearly made up. One way that I'll know that right away is if they're fake sources. To this day, I'm still getting these from students once in a while. I'll just laugh. I'll be like, hey, can you hop on a Zoom call and show me your source? And they'll, email me back and be like, busted, right? I'm like, yeah. So make sure that you're verifying sources. I think right now it's not a great idea to use AI without attribution, and that's the only way my students get in trouble is if they don't give attribution to the AI tool. I allow any use. I might ask a student to redo something if I feel like they're over relying or not verifying sources or whatever. But as long as they're telling me what they're doing, I have been allowing pretty much any use. Accepting all AI outputs as fact. They hallucinate. They're getting better, but they still do. And then neglecting human expertise and experience. This is important, right? Back to that whole long spiel I gave you about being the first reader of an article or the unique reader of an article. You are a unique individual, and AI cannot replace you in being you. Even if you program the very best persona bot in the world, it's still not you. So make sure to consider that. A few ethical things to keep in mind. Always cite your AI tool use. I've said it over and over. Watch for academic integrity. Now, this third point, we all started by reviewing terms of service. And one thing that, well, I said I allow any and all use of AI, but one thing that really makes me angry with my students is if I have a fully online class and they copy and paste their peers' work, like maybe to do peer review, into an LLM tool without express written consent, because it's a violation of copyright and intellectual property and privacy, right? So we just don't ever want to do that. Now, if you want to write to your peer and ask them, that's a different story. Or if that's the activity and everyone gives explicit consent, again, a different story. But always keeping these rights top of mind and also privacy top of mind, I think is important, especially if you're working with a tool like DeepSeek, which I really liked DeepSeek, but privacy implications are obviously huge with an LLM that is Chinese, right? So keep that in mind. It is a really great tool, though. If you haven't played with it yet, you should try it. And then finally, follow your institutional guidelines, or if you're publishing in a peer-reviewed journal, make sure you follow their guidelines. So our next steps with AI research, first of all, practice. And I recommend you try a bunch of different tools. I am still trying new tools, so I'll be introducing some new ones to you. And if you have ideas for me, please share them. We're all kind of learning together. Develop your prompting skills, but keep in mind it's more important really to develop your iterative skills with an AI tool. Create some kind of verification checklist. One of your textbook readings has a suggested verification checklist that I think is pretty good. Stay current. It's honestly kind of hard to stay current, but do your best, right? Especially in your field, maybe the field that you're in, pay attention to what's going on with that with AI. And finally, as I've already asked, please share your experiences with me and with your peers. I think our discussion boards are really fun for that. All right, if you have any questions, reach out, maybe hop into our live session on Wednesday from 5:30 to 6:30 in Zoom. But I'm really, really excited to see where you go with Research Tool this week and also to share some new things with you. Have a great week, everyone.